Can a decision of this court affect foreign policy? In other
Yes.
words, is it beyond the jurisdiction of the courts, this Supreme Court, to rule on a legal issue simply because it has an impact on foreign policy?
No, it's still within the jurisdiction of the court to do so, Your Honor.
Yes. For so long as this court does not dictate what foreign policy will be, is that not correct?
Or interfere in the wisdom of the executive's judgment.
Yes, but certainly, even the president who conducts foreign affairs, maybe in a privileged and primary manner, has to deal with the Constitution. Is that not correct?
That has been the import of several decisions of this honorable court.
In other words, the president, when dealing with other countries, is limited by the Constitution. Is that not correct?
He may not violate himself the Constitution
Yes.
in his foreign relations. Yes.
And the Constitution, as far as any public officer is concerned, is an important piece of paper. It is not a senseless document. Is that not correct?
Definitely, most
Yes.
definitely, Your Honor.
So it becomes senseless only if we do not interpret it correctly. It becomes senseless if we do not invoke it with the judiciary. But it is important that at certain times the Supreme Court speaks on the limitations for the conduct of foreign policy. Is that not correct?
In fact, in the Constitution, if I may add, Your Honor, the faithful execution clause imposes an obligation on the chief executive to faithfully execute.
In
the
other words,
Constitution
even
and
the
laws.
head of state, the president, is not above the Constitution. Is that
Yes,
not
Your
correct?
Honor.
Okay. And the Constitution actually says in Article 2, Section 1, I hope maybe some PowerPoint will be put there, that the Philippines is a democratic and republican state. All governmental authority emanates from the people speaking through the Constitution. Is that not correct?
That is correct.
Yes. And in Article 2, it actually says that we also follow the policy of general principles of law, of international law, becoming part of the law of the land. Is that not correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And I think it will be important in this case that it also says we adhere to a policy of peace, equality, justice, freedom, cooperation, and amity with all nations. Is that not correct?
That is part of the Constitution, yes.
What does amity mean?
It means cooperation with other
Yes.
states.
Does it mean friendship?
It could perhaps extend to
Yes.
that as long as it does not violate any constitutional provisions.
So there is a provision in the Constitution that says friend, amity, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, but that is not the only provision in the Constitution. We go to Section 3. And Section 3 is, I think, very important. The armed forces of the Philippines is the protector of the people and the state. Its goal is to secure the sovereignty of the state and the integrity of national territory. Is this a foreign policy provision?
No, Your Honor, that is a
I think it is
obligation.
because it says national territory. To define national territory and to protect it means where you send your Navy and Coast Guard in order to set the boundaries of your state. Is that not correct?
Yes, that is
Yes.
defined by Philippine law in the Constitution
Yes.
itself.
And if you look at Section 7 of Article 2, it actually says that the paramount consideration for foreign policy is national sovereignty, territorial integrity, national interest, and the right to self-determination. There is territorial integrity there too, correct?
Those are the main
Yes.
limitations imposed by the Constitution, Your Honor.
Okay. The president is faced with many problems because he is the president, or he will be, she in the future maybe, I don't know, is the president, correct? And these issues are very complex. And certainly, it will help if Congress weighs in and the judiciary also weighs in insofar as their competence is concerned. Is that not correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
And that is not something to be angry about. That is something to accept and perhaps tolerate and perhaps even welcome, because then many heads will be able to contribute to ideas in order to solve a particular problem. Is that not correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And our problem with the West Philippine Sea, actually the problem given to us by others in the West Philippine Sea is a very complex one, correct?
Yes.
It is in fact the Achilles heel of many administrations. Is that not correct?
It could be, yes, sir.
Having spoken and dealt with many Westcom generals, these are generals assigned to that sector, their greatest fear is when there is a conflict in the West Philippine Sea, because they know that our resources are limited. And therefore, it might help that the judiciary will also weigh in within its sphere of competence. Is that not correct?
That is true, Your Honor.
Now, would you know if there has been any Senate investigation on the implementation of the arbitral award?
As far as I know, there has not been.
What
any.
about the House? Has there been an implementation?
To my knowledge, Your Honor, none.
And insofar as the Supreme Court is concerned, is this the first case that deals with the arbitral award?
I believe this is the case of first impression.
Yes. Okay. I'll go to other procedural issues. Again, I think my colleagues have lots of questions in relation to the foreign policy angle. You did not include the fishers in your respondents, specifically the fishers that that do cyanide fishing, dynamite fishing. You did not include whoever installed the artificial installation in the Mischief Reef, correct?
No, we did not include them, Your Honor.
Why is that?
First, insofar as the fishers are concerned, we do not have the information necessary to implead them. We do not even know
Are
their-
all the indispensable parties therefore impleaded in your petition?
I believe so, if Your Honor, please. Yes.
But when we examine it, it is only the government that is impleaded, down to the Coast Guard commander, correct?
Because our theory of the case, Your Honor, is that this is about enforcement of Philippine laws by agencies of government.
Okay. Perhaps you'll cover that more, whether or not your case is dismissible on the ground of the lack of indispensable parties, or whether the actual fishers that do dynamite fishing, as well as whoever maintains the artificial installation in Mischief Reef, as well as the ships that actually surround the Ayungin Shoal, making it impossible to resupply the 8 or 10 Marines, I'm not sure, in the BRP Sierra Madre, impossible. Would you please cover that in your memoranda?
Yes, Your Honor. We will
Okay,
do that.
now, in terms of the rules on cases involving the environment, would you agree with me that there are 3 parts? The first part dealing with civil, criminal, and administrative cases involving the environment. The second part dealing with the special proceeding called the writ of kalikasan. And the third part dealing with a special civil action called continuing mandamus.
Yes, Your Honor.
And in relation to all of this, what is the unique situation for a writ of kalikasan?
Well, the magnitude of the damage should be such as to prejudice the inhabitants of 2 or more cities or provinces.
Okay, just to be clear, for the first part, in terms of civil actions, there can be TEPOs and EPOs, temporary environmental protection orders and environmental protection orders, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
For the special proceeding called the petition for a writ of kalikasan, there is also the issuance of a writ of kalikasan. This is different from a TEPO or an EPO, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
In fact, when we issued the writ of kalikasan, you did not yet get any affirmative relief, except for the Solicitor General on behalf of the respondent government agencies to actually file a return, correct?
That is correct.
It's a very similar structure to a petition for a writ of habeas corpus, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Which is a special proceeding.
Yes, Your Honor.
Right? And therefore, the most important function of a writ of habeas corpus, similar to that a writ of kalikasan, is for government to reveal certain facts which the petitioners may not know. Is that not correct?
That is true, Your Honor.
As in writ of habeas corpus, for government to reveal whether or not a person is in fact detained and the reasons for the detention, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
For a writ of kalikasan, whether in fact there is an environmental catastrophe of such magnitude and what government is doing if it is the respondent. Is that not correct?
That is true, Your Honor.
And the court then will deal based on the submissions of the parties as to what its final orders are in terms of these special proceedings. Is that not correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
In petition for habeas corpus, whether to order the release or to simply dismiss the entire petition. Is that not correct?
That is true, Your Honor.
Yes. So there is a difference between the writ of habeas corpus and the order from the petition for habeas corpus. Is that not correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
As We issued the writ of kalikasan, but you haven't won the case.
No, Your Honor.
The issue here is whether we can put certain affirmative reliefs, if there are any, within our jurisdiction in a final order. Is that not correct?
The issuance of the writ upon filing of the petition is a ministerial act if the petition is sufficient in form
Yes.
and substance. It is up to the court to grant the privilege of the writ in its judgment.
The other procedure is continuing mandamus, which you also invoke, which
Yes,
is a
sir.
special civil action.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. And in the writ of continuing mandamus, the affirmative relief is an act or a series of acts to government in order to accomplish certain things, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Such as, for instance, to clean up Manila Bay, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Wouldn't you think that this, in fact, infringes upon the executive prerogative to supervise all the agencies that are supposed to clean up Manila Bay, for example?
I do not think it has any conflict there because after all, the primary obligation of the executive, the chief executive and his department is to observe the faithful execution of the laws, which would include environmental laws.
But by issuing a writ of continuing mandamus for your case, wouldn't we be supervising what government does on a daily basis? Because they will be asked to report maybe on a quarterly or semi-annual basis, and therefore replacing ourselves, 15 in a collegiate body, skilled in terms of interpreting the law, but not dealing with contingent circumstances, replacing ourselves with the executive.
I do not think that this honorable court would have to go into the minutiae or the details of its judgment. The reports would simply show whether the respondent is complying with the judgment of the court.
Yes, I hope you will cover in your memoranda that line as to where the writ of continuing mandamus, which you are asking, or the writ of kalikasan will traverse and therefore bring this court into an executive function of which we are not competent, dealing with, of course, the unique nature of the environment and the concept of writ of kalikasan. By the way, counsel, I understand that you've studied abroad. Is
Yes,
there a writ
sir.
of kalikasan in the United States?
Not that I know of, Your Honor.
Is there a writ of kalikasan anywhere else in the world?
To the best of my knowledge, there is none.
So this is a unique thing that the court is dealing with. And
Yes, sir.
therefore, to a certain extent, we are defining a new remedy for the environment. Is that not correct?
Yes, it's
And
very
given climate
groundbreaking.
change, given the catastrophe that we are awaiting, by 2040, if we do nothing, we will reach 1.5 degrees centigrade increase in the average temperature of the globe. And by that time, disasters will become catastrophes. 2040, and by that time, we will still be alive. Correct? And
Yes, sir.
our children will reach middle age, 30s or 40s. Is that not correct?
That's
And therefore, you have to, maybe in your memoranda, clarify where the writ of kalikasan and the continuing mandamus stops insofar as this court is concerned. When is it not within our province? But there is guidance in Rule 7, Section 1. This is in the issue on the rule on writ of kalikasan. It says here the cause of action is a constitutional right based on the constitutional right to a balanced and healthful ecology. That is the right. The breach is violated or threatened with violation by an unlawful act or omission, and it should involve a damage of such magnitude and prejudice to life, health, and property of inhabitants affecting 2 or more cities or provinces. Is that not correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. Let's look at the magnitude first. The magnitude is both breadth and depth, correct?
Yes, Your
Breadth
Honor.
in terms of the number of provinces affected, depth in terms of the catastrophe that it is affecting. Would you say that this is applicable in your case?
Yes, Your Honor. We are talking about only one body of water when I refer to both the West Philippine Sea and the waters within the Philippine archipelago. We know that the ecological system in an ocean is very much interconnected and very much interdependent. So that damage, for example, to the reefs within the Spratly Islands could very well affect the seas that our fisher folk fish in.
Not only ours, but the common heritage of mankind,
Yes.
because do fish have passports, by the way?
No, Your Honor.
No. And you will never know whether a fish is Chinese or Taiwanese or Vietnamese. Is that not correct?
That is correct. Your
Yes, probably all of them are Filipinos, right? maybe some of them are orphans, and therefore natural-born Filipino citizens. No, just kidding. The most important portion where your petition may be problematic is the allegation of violated or threatened with violation by an unlawful act or omission. Okay. Are you alleging an unlawful act done by the respondents? Have they
Omission,
done an unlawful act?
unlawful omission, if Your Honor, please.
No, unlawful act. Dolo.
No,
Meaning
Your
to say, not unlawful act. So you're alleging an omission. Is that not
Yes,
correct?
Your Honor.
And that omission, as I have said, can be factual in nature, correct?
It could be.
And the omission that you're saying is what kind of omission? I mean, what are the things which they should have done that they have not done?
Unjustified neglect, Your Honor, in enforcing the environmental laws. For example, that up to now, we do not have, our government does not have even the vessels to do proper monitoring
Okay.
in the affected areas.
So in your view, for so long as the artificial installation in Mischief Reef is there, for so long as our fishers cannot fish, even using traditional artisanal means according to the arbitral award in Ayungin as well as in Scarborough, there is neglect on the part of the respondents.
Yes, Your Honor.
Even though that is a very complex matter, even though it may not take 3 years, because that's from 2016, it's now 2019. It may take incremental actions, diplomatic moves, certain kinds of negotiations, allocations in the budget, in order to be able to accomplish the end that you wish.
As far as the agreements between states are concerned, that is correct, Your Honor. But as far as individual violations by private fishers, nationals of other countries within our seas, that is subject of enforcement by our agencies.
Or is this a matter of whether the respondents have taken acts in good faith, which they believe, insofar as reasonability is concerned, will lead to the result of actually helping our fishers and preserving that environment? It is not necessary that this court will actually see the removal of the environmental destruction or the ecological disaster.
It does not have to reach that far, yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Perhaps in your memoranda, you are going to detail for us what exactly would you want an order coming from this court to contain. And I hope that you will take into consideration that we are not Congress and we are not the executive in order for us to be able to do this. Continuing mandamus, the other rule that you invoke, requires that there is an unlawful neglect to perform an act. And what is that unlawful neglect? What law have they violated?
Well, one, of course, Your Honor, is the provisions of the Fisheries Code that provide that the mere presence of a foreign fishing vessel within our waters creates a presumption that they are engaged in poaching.
Again, I hope that you can cover that more and explain it clearer, because certainly the fact that we have a lot of murderers still out there doesn't mean that our police is not doing their best in order to reduce the crime, correct? The fact that there are many people that still take property which are not theirs doesn't mean that there is neglect of duty, correct? And the fact that there are illegal poachers that are found within our exclusive economic zone, that's 200 nautical miles, doesn't necessarily mean that they are neglectful, correct?
Well, if I may make the same analogy, Your Honor, the fact that the police, Philippine National Police, would not even have the motor vehicles necessary to go after their criminals would, I think, constitute neglect. And in this particular case, there are admissions made in the return itself, in the annexes, that the government agencies do not even have the vessels to make it to the shoal or to the reef.
How many vessels would you want this court to order purchased?
Well, at the very least, there must be a clear plan on the part of the government, concrete proposals to acquire those ships. Because otherwise, the laws that we have would simply be paper laws that
yes,
would be
but
impossible
counsel,
for...
how will the court know whether the plan is sufficient? In other words, Do we need to measure our coastline? And what is the ratio of a vessel to our coastline?
I do not think we would have to go that far.
Okay, again, please cover that in your memoranda because we want to know specifically what the affirmative reliefs are, if any, that you think the court has jurisdiction to issue. By the way, the allegation is you did not meet a condition precedent found in Section 138C of Republic Act 8550 as amended by 10654. What do you say to that, Counsel?
Section 138 refers to citizen suits that is covered by Part 1 of the RPEC, if Your Honor, please. That is not covered by Part 2 or Part 3 on the writ of kalikasan or the writ of continuing mandamus.
Yes.
It's our position that it's not required for writs of kalikasan or mandamus.
Is it your claim that you have substantially verified your petition?
Yes, Your Honor.
You can be interrogated on that later by maybe my colleagues. And the other thing is, there are no judicial affidavits attached to your petition for a writ of kalikasan. Would you stipulate to that? There are no judicial affidavits.
That is true. However, if you look at the rule carefully, if Your Honor, please, there is no requirement of judicial affidavits. In fact, in one of the decisions of this court, that distinction was made between the submission of evidence and the submission of judicial affidavits. We submit that the Philippine Memorial as well as the arbitral award, which came from the government itself, constitute the facts of the case, and there really is no factual dispute as far as the destruction to the environment, the incidents that are alleged therein.